Well, ladies and gentlemen, highlight of the day so far, apart from that wonderful talk by Rob Brown earlier, we've now got the one and only Steve Megson in the room. For those of you that don't know, Steve is the MD of Quiet Storm Solutions, who have quietly been putting this massive extravaganza together. This is the biggest event of the year in the East Midlands by a long way, and you've seen already how successful it is. Quiet Storm have a successful track record dating back 25 years. Steve's only 29 himself, so he started early. And Steve's presentation is going to help you get more sales and get more referrals and make sure your message is heard. So here to help you get what you want, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Steve Megson.
Thank you very much, Rob. Everybody hear me? Because I know there's been a problem. Normally, there's no problem in hearing me. Anybody that knows me personally knows that. So if I get too loud, tell me. But first thing I want to do is show you this slide that got sent to me last week. It's been doctored. I'm guessing that many of you would have seen the slide, but I thought it was quite amusing and that it's relevant to what I'm going to talk about today. Has anybody seen that slide before? Didn't say that on it, did it? Now, this is obviously referring to the burger sort of beef processing fiasco that we've got, where we don't know whether we're eating cows or horses. I know it's pretty much the same when you're buying in a service or using a new supplier. It's very difficult to tell the difference between a good company and a bad company until it's too late. Does anybody agree with that? Yeah? Because when we're buying, we've got a completely different mindset to when we're selling. See, when we're selling, we know how good we are, and we should have a good idea of the competition, and we know why that customer should be buying from us. Often it's very, very difficult to articulate that. So anybody want to find out how we articulate that? How you make what you say heard? Yeah, hands would be good here. Yeah, right, okay. It's all about time. And this bit comes from my friend down here called Simon, who showed me something, and it got me thinking along this thing. And what I did was I looked at why it's so difficult to get your message heard today. See, post. When do you think post was invented? We'll get to sales, honestly, but I need a bit of audience participation. When do you think sales was invented? 1800. Okay, so by 1850, post was the way that people communicated, or you did it in person. 100 years later, the phone was invented. So now you didn't have to see people in person, you could ring around. So by the 1950s, that became commonplace in businesses. Then things got really interesting. For those younger than about 25, this is a mobile phone. It wasn't very mobile, it was about the size of a car battery, it weighed about the same, but it meant that you could be anywhere and take a phone call. Again, completely changed the way we do business. Mobile phones. Who's got a mobile phone on them now? Yeah, I hope they're turned off. So something happened around this time. This is the 1980s, so we've gone 100 years to there. From there we've gone 80 years. So the time's getting smaller, changes are getting bigger, having more impact. Moore's law. Anyone know what Moore's law is? No? Moore's law is this thing about the power of processing, computer processing, doubles every 2 years. So what happens if the power of processing doubles? Things happen faster, don't they? So just bear that in mind. Around the same time, so things happen that fast now, we've gone from the analogue watch to something that's got loads of noughts on because we need to measure things in much more smaller increments. The Apple Mac. This enabled me to start in my business, and Simon sold me my first Apple Mac in 1987. My best friend and my worst enemy. My worst enemy because it meant that everybody else, because of Steve Jobs' vision, could do typesetting and all the leaflets and things like that that I used to get paid to do. So I had to change my business. A bit like we're having to change now, constantly evolving businesses to stay ahead of the technology, to stay one step ahead of what's happening around you. But desktop computers really changed business, didn't they? Just like the mobile phone. When do you think email became available for everybody? Yeah, 95. It was released by American Commerce in 94. Do you know who invented the World Wide Web? Tim Berners-Lee. Now, interestingly enough, when I was researching this, I found he lived not 5 miles from where I live now, in a place called Wimborne in Dorset. And he worked in Poole, which is where I live. The World Wide Web and email really made massive changes in the way we do business, because it meant that not only could we call somebody, we could send them stuff. Because before, we had to send them via fax. Who's got a fax these days? See, business keeps changing, doesn't it? And it gets faster and faster. Google. When do you think Google really started to take off? 2000. Do you see what's happening here? 100 years, 80 years, 10 years, 5 years. E-commerce really took off when Google took off, because what it did is it could put you in front of more people. Selling is about getting in front of people, isn't it? Not necessarily face-to-face, although that's good, but sometimes it's not the way to do it in the best, if you like, most effective and efficient use of your time and resources. So e-commerce came on board just after sort of 2000. And I mean, today, how do you do your shopping? It's like you can buy pretty much anything you want online. And what it's done is it's made everything pretty much accessible to everybody. How many people got a smartphone on them? Not just a mobile phone, one that gives you emails, gives you web access. So we're absolutely a walking office now. It doesn't matter if we're out the office, because the office is with us. It's in our pockets. This means everybody has got a shorter attention span. What does that mean when you're selling? It means you need to get your message heard. So I call this presentation, What Do You Want? Because as a buyer, if we've got someone trying to sell to us, that's pretty much what's going on in our mind, isn't it? What do you want? What do you want from me? What can you do for me? Because I've only got a bit of time. And I'm going to make my mind up pretty quickly whether what you've got to sell me or what you've got to tell me is interesting to me. Whether it is or not in reality. So how important is it that other people hear what we say? Well, anybody know who this lady is? And what happened when she walked out onto the stage? Everybody laughed. Why? Because they judged the book by its cover. And because she was a bit almost childlike in the way that she came across, you know, never been kissed. Not that that's some, I forget how she phrased it, not that's an invitation. And then she said, I want to be a world famous singer, like Elaine Page. And all the audience sniggered. Because they thought, there's no way on earth this lady's going to sing like Elaine Page. Because part of the enjoyment of X Factor is watching people fail, isn't it? They believe they're fantastic. And they go out there in this sort of gladiator theatre and get absolutely annihilated for our amusement. And then every so often, there's a good one there. You see, I don't know if you know this, but before they get to the stage, they go through about 3 auditions. So the people putting them on stage, they pretty much know they're pretty good, or at this end of the spectrum. And everything you do is framed to engineer how you perceive that person. Have you noticed this last year's X Factor, the sad stories come back into play, hasn't it? I was homeless. I mean, you know, fair play, I don't want to be homeless, but it's like they're playing on. A couple of years ago, that wasn't fashionable, so they took it out of the presentation. But they conjure up sympathy. The way they position these people is all engineered to get you to do a certain thing. Now, in your business, the way you present yourself should be engineered in the same way. What happened when she started singing? There was a massive reaction, wasn't there? You know, goosebumps. And she sang one of my favourite songs from one of my favourite musicals, which has just been released as a film. What was it? I Dreamed a Dream, and it was from Les Mis. That's one way to get your message heard. Have such a massive contrast to what people are expecting that they can't help but take note. Now, in business, how difficult is that? Because that takes time, and that time was engineered for Susan Boyle And when we go in, pretty much the person, as we walk through the door of the office of the person we're talking to, or as they approach us on our exhibition stand, they've made their mind up like the audience had. But unlike the audience, they're not going to sit there and wait for you to do your show and give your pitch. They've already made the mind up. Move on. So how do we get our message heard? Right. Now, I've told you, we all judge a book by its cover. And another word for that is having a paradigm. You know, we think we know what it is, therefore that's what we see. So I want you to be observant now. I'm going to show you a playing card. I want you to tell me what it is. What was that playing card?
Queen of Spades, but red.
Queen of Spades, but red. Did anybody else spot that? So out of all these people, 3 people spotted it. Because we expect to see a red queen being a diamond or a heart. And if it's curvy, and we're sort of not taking too much notice, then it'll be a heart. I'll just show it to everybody. The Queen of Spades, but red. Because our paradigm says it's red and it's a queen, and then we go, oh, it's either a heart or a diamond. We see what we want to see. In business, that's why branding is so crucial. And branding isn't about logos, it's about everything. It's about your personal branding. How do you present yourself? I always use this analogy. If I was in Newquay trying to sell surfboards dressed like this, I don't think I'd be that successful. But equally, if I was trying to give a talk on business and I was dressed in board shorts and a t-shirt with long hair, I wish, but again, would you guys think I'd got the credibility? So what is it in your business that will give you that credibility? How do people judge you to give you the time to explain what's important to them? It's something that's part of the package. So I'll go back. There's 3 ways you can get your message heard. We've talked about one of them, having something that's such a contrast that it blows people's socks off. But we know that's difficult. The next one, see, Susan Boyle now, she's had a bit of a polish, hasn't she? She's had a branding done. See the difference? Just a bit of difference, isn't there, from the first picture? You see, if she'd have come on like that and said, I want to sing like Elaine Page, we'd have expected it, because she looked the part. Now, I don't really like Susan Boyle. I don't really like her version of Les Mis. So why would I show this? Why would I talk about it? Because she's a fantastic example of, from somebody that's not been successful for 40-odd years to overnight global success. That's one reason. The other reason is, someone tweeted me this. No, sorry, I don't do tweet, I'm afraid. I do text. I'm old-fashioned. Someone texted me this. A bit like the first picture. And I don't know if anyone's, a bit like the first picture, I don't know if anyone's received this. But the other thing that will get your message heard is if somebody else delivers it. And what I mean by that is, if someone else says, this person's good, you should listen to what they say. Or however they frame it, but they've endorsed you. And they've endorsed you with somebody that trusts them. And because you trust this person, and they're saying, listen to this person, you get the airtime. But it's still very difficult to get your message heard. Now, has anybody seen this? Right. This is the bit that's interesting, because this was from her, and you can imagine with Simon Cowell behind you, it's going to be a pretty impressive PR outfit. Can anybody read this? What does it say? You see, you're reading what you want to read. You see, it doesn't matter how the information is delivered, we see what we want to see. So it's really incredibly important that when we get that opportunity, because the time that we've got, the attention span that we're going to command is going to be like this, where it used to be like this. So we've got to make every second count. And that means you've got to do your thinking beforehand. So does anybody want to know the only thing that we can do to get attention and keep attention that's in our control? Obviously not. Show hands here would be good. Show me you're still alive. Come on, I've got more people sat in the audience than that, so you're either sat on your hands. Who wants to know how to keep and hold attention? Thank you. How can you get your message heard? Well, I've been doing it all the way through this presentation, because I've been asking you questions. Because when I ask you a question, your brain can't do anything but think about the answer. That's the way we're programmed as people. We need to solve problems. That's how our brains are hardwired. So if you ask someone a question that's relevant to them, it's got to be relevant, it's relevant to them, but leads them to where you want them to go in terms of a thought process, it'll be much more effective and powerful than if you tell them the answer. Because if you tell them the answer, you're not really selling. You're not really interested. You're just announcing what it is that you want to announce. And they're going, yeah, I've given you 3 minutes to do that. Okay, right, next. Whereas if you ask them a question, they've got to think about what you're saying. They've got to engage with you. So selling's about asking really good questions. Now, Andy Gilbert was on before. I don't know if anyone saw him, but he's a master of asking good questions. That's what he does to make people think, because he's into change management. He's been change people's thought process. And I say proceed with caution. Why? Because if you don't think about the questions you're going to ask, the person you're talking to could go off in a completely different direction. So, you need one of these. Not a sheepdog. Don't take a sheepdog into... It was a metaphor. Yeah? You understand what a metaphor is? Great. So you need questions to guide your person that you're talking to, that you're trying to convince that you've got the best solution, into the right spot for you. Questions make people realise what's important and why. But what's important to them and why it's important to them. So your tailored questions should be relevant to them. Is this making sense so far? So I've not talked about brochures and all the stuff that we're known for, because if we do great brochures and great websites and great exhibition stands and great events like this and great video and all the stuff that Quiet Storm's known for, it's not worth a jot if people don't use it in the right way. That's why people have got to be able to sell. That's why we focus a third of our business on teaching you how to sell more effectively. That doesn't mean to say that you can't sell effectively now, but it's a bit like Tiger Woods. He's got a coach with him, hasn't he? The coach isn't a better golfer, but standing outside, you can sometimes see the reality of what's really going on. So I'll go back to what I said before. You need to really think about the questions. When's the best time to do the thinking about questions? Yeah, before you go into the appointment. Now often, because you're the expert in your field, you will know what the right answer is for the client. But how many times have you gone into somewhere, so you've walked into a shop or you've walked into a car showroom, is the favourite one for me. You walk into a car showroom and someone comes and says, can I help you? You go, no, I'm just looking. I just happened to stumble into this car showroom. I'm not really looking at cars. Of course we're looking at cars, but we don't like to be sold to. The way you get down the barriers is to engage people in thought, and that means you need to ask them questions. And guide them to the right answers. What's important to me isn't what's important to the next person or the next person. So if you're telling me, and I've not got to that conclusion yet, I don't know why it's important to me, because I haven't gone through the thinking process to get to that end result, then I'm not really listening to you, because you're not listening to me. If you ask me a question about me, and then you can build on what I say back, and lead me to somewhere that is a positive difference in my business, in the way I do something, then I'm more likely to engage with you as a supplier. You see, I go back to the first slide of the cows. Anybody here think they've eaten horse meat? Anybody would know the difference? No, you see, until someone tells you the difference, you don't know it, do you? I mean, you go back 4 months, no one had ever said, oh, you know, if you buy a Finnish lasagna, you're eating horse meat. We've got to take them through a thought process to get them to where we want them to be, but only if it's good for them. Because otherwise, you'll never make a second sale. Not to that customer, anyway. Now, I love this slide. That's the only reason I put it in. But I think it's a great metaphor for sales, because in the old days, that was it, wasn't it? Put yourself in the right place, open your mouth, and the sales will flood in. Because people had to do things very laboriously. They needed to know the network of people. I know when, you know, I used to put myself in a place, and people would come to me for business. Now I have to put myself in the place where people go, places like this, so that I'm in the right environment to do business. A subtle change, but very, very strong difference in the way you operate. You've got to command the respect of the people you sell to, because it's too easy for them to look for somebody else that does what you do. You know, how difficult it is to find another supplier? It's just a Google search away, isn't it? Just a Google search away. If you want to know more about how to go through the thought process and define your questions in relation to what the people that you think you are selling to think they are buying, then we're operating workshops. We've got them on all sorts of things, from websites to exhibitions and networking. They're 45 minutes, they're completely free. On your seat there's a pad, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a leaflet. There's 6 different workshops. All we need to know is whether your business is above 300,000 or below 300,000. There's different workshops depending on what your turnover is. Obviously, if your turnover is above 300,000, you'll have a different sales structure. If you're below 300,000, you'll probably be the business owner doing the selling. I've been Steve Megson. You've been animated. Thank you very much.